Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys checking the video out and spending some time with me today. We are going to be talking about the one question that there's not a single bass angler out there that can answer. Maybe theorize about it, but I have not heard one definitive answer to this question. So we're going to pose this question in today's video and see what you guys think about it and see if you guys have an answer for it. Also guys, a big thank you out there to everybody that's been taking time to support the channel through our Tackle Warehouse links in the description and subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Really appreciate that, guys. So I just want you guys to know that that does not go unnoticed. So thank you very much for that. Okay guys, here is the question that I'm going to pose to you that nobody can answer in bass fishing. I have three theories on it myself, but whether that's an answer or not, it remains to be seen. Why? And here's the question. Why is it that lures that caught lots of big bass, 50, 60, 70 years ago now, back 50 or 60, 70 years ago, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, why don't they catch any fish now? For example, the world record bass was caught in Georgia on a lure called a creek chub wigglefish. All it is, it's a wooden bait with a metal lip on it. That caught a 22 pound, 4 ounce bass. Good luck catching a 2 pound bass on that today, let alone a 22 pound bass on something like that. And in addition to that, I remember back, fishing when I was a kid out there, we used to take these purple flip tail worms and just throw them anywhere at Table Rock Lake. You just go down the bank anywhere and you catch bass all day long on it. Or you could take an old mud bug and catch a bunch of fish on an old mud bug. Bunch of old lures that I've heard stories from all the old guys I've talked to that they used to get out there and catch bunches and bunches of big fish. There was a couple of guys in the bass club I fished with in Joplin, Missouri that used to fish. We talked about the old Spoonbill Rebel, which is a real rudimentary, early jerkbait. And I remember guys that they never went fishing and didn't catch a 7 to 8 pounder. Every single time they used to have this contest like at Big M Boat Dock down at Table Rock Lake. It was called the weekly lunker thing. And shoot, there'd be 50 or 60 5 to 10 pound bass weighed in every single week on like a hellbender or a black jig and eel or something like that. And so why is it that those lures that used to produce giant bass and lots of them, you can't get a bite on them now whatsoever? And it is, there's a bunch of them out there. So I could give you guys, a half a dozen lures right now that used to catch phenomenal strings of bass. And I would bet that you could take them out to any public body of water now. And you probably couldn't catch a fish if you fished it a week during the prime time of the season. They just don't work anymore. So why is that? What is the reason for that? Now, I have three theories for it. Now, like I said, nobody's been able to give a definite answer, but only theoretical here. Here's the three theories that I have why all of those old time lures that used to catch tons of big ones don't work anymore. Number one is I just don't think there's as many bass in the lake. I think that we have a fraction of the fish in our lakes now that we had 50, 60, 70 years ago. Obviously, there's no way to sample how many fish exactly were in a lake 50 or 60, 70 years ago, but I can assure you there was tons more. It's just common sense. There was nobody hardly fished. There wasn't any tournaments. Fish weren't getting pressure and they were easy to catch, and there was lots of big ones. Sort of blows away that myth that you have to harvest bass, because that wasn't true. Because back on some of these awesome lakes I fished back when I was a little kid in the 60s, they didn't get any pressure. There wasn't people, keeping fish or catching very many of them, because people fished out of a V-bottom rowboat and there was no tournaments, but yet there was tons of big ones. So number one, we just don't have the fish like we used to. And I think that a lot of the bigger fish genetics have been taken out of the lake by people that used to keep them to, mount them on walls and stuff, especially prevalent back in the 70s. That went on a lot. The second thing is the fact that it's one of my theories, guys, that bass evolve very quickly on sort of a mass consciousness level to avoid certain lures out there. That to me makes more sense than anything else, because I'll give you another prime example. There was a period, guys, from about 1983 to about 1986 here in Missouri, that the only thing that I fished with all over the state here was a 1/2 ounce black rubber jig with a black pork frog on it with 30 pound test high visibility blue monofilament line and a flipping stick. And I probably won as many or more local tournaments doing that over that 4 or 5 year period than any other technique I've ever fished. Good luck now. You probably, if you fish the 30-pound test high vis line now with that black jig and a black pork frog, yeah, you might catch one at night, but the odds even catching one in the daytime, even if you're in prime conditions, it just doesn't work anymore. So I think that the bass on some level, and that's how they've survived on this planet for millions of years, is they learn quick, they fail quick, and they evolve quick to learn not to do certain things out there. It's sort of like there was, I don't know if you guys have ever heard that study about the 40 monkey studies, but anyway, there was a study done years ago and they basically determined that monkeys in 2 different places of the world figured out how to get into a certain nut about the same time. It's like they figured out the technique of opening up the shell and getting to this nut, and about the same time they figured out how to do this through observation. It was almost like there was sort of a mass consciousness that merged with the monkeys on the planet. I sort of think it's the same thing with the bass. That may seem way out there in left field, but that's one of the best explanations I've seen, and that's closely tied into the third one, which is simply fishing pressure. I think that fishing pressure, when you talk about the evolution of a bass, getting conditioned to certain lures on some cellular level, and then you talk about there being fewer bass in a lake, I simply think the fishing pressure is part of that. Fish naturally get more wary, they get more finicky, they get more inactive anytime that you have heavier fishing pressure because they tend to want to hide a lot. It's like a deer, when a deer sees lots of humans around, they tend to hide. You don't see them. They come out at night or they come out in times when they're not out there. So the amount of decibel level, as far as the trolling motor noise, electronic noise, outboard motor noise, all that together, I think tends to make the fish more inactive. And when they get inactive, they tend to require more finessey approach to catch them most of the time. There are windows when other baits work out there, but for the most part, you really have to downsize and get creative with catching them. But anyway, I think about that a lot. I mean, I really do, because one of the things that I remember a lot is and I've talked about this a lot, my dad used to fish those purple 8-inch flip tail worms. And he used to take a little split shot with a gold hook on it, and we'd go down to Table Rock or Bull Shoals or Grand Lake, and really, literally anywhere you went, he'd just pull up on a nothing gravel bank. Or he didn't know back then we didn't know anything about, we didn't even have a depth finder on the boat. You just went down the bank and went fishing. You just pulled up to an area that was out of the wind or something and just started casting. And by far, more times than not, anywhere we stopped on the lake, you could catch one on a purple flip tail worm in 3 foot of water on Table Rock Lake. Guys, you can't do that anymore. It's impossible to catch one doing that. And it's like all those factors lead up to point to that direction, what I just talked about. But anyway, I'd be curious to hear you guys, if there's anyone out there that can definitively answer that question, have at it, because I think at this point we just have some theories about it. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.